Good morning, I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, fire and water. In a summer of extreme temperatures, breaking this morning record rainfall in the St. Louis area, breaking a nearly 150-year-old record in just 5 hours. Flooded roads shutting the city down and leading to emergency rescues. We're going to have the very latest on that. Plus, the worst wildfire of the year is choking the skies of California. The fire burning near Yosemite, threatening an American icon, destroying structures and forcing thousands to evacuate.
She's looking over my shoulder, and, you know, this home that we had just gotten married at 2 weeks ago, it explodes.
The latest on that huge fire as brutal heat blankets the country, with the Pacific Northwest now bracing for temperatures near 115 degrees. Recipe for recession. The Federal Reserve expected to raise interest rates again to combat sky-high inflation. But there's growing concern that the economy may have already slipped into a recession. The high-stakes meetings taking place today, the other major economic reports expected this week, and the impact all of this could have on your wallet. Pilgrimage of Penitence. Pope Francis offering a historic apology to the Indigenous people of Canada for the atrocities carried out by Catholic missionaries. His direct message that leaders hope will be the first step toward healing from generations of trauma. And women mean business. Today we're going one-on-one with the president of the world's largest privately funded nonprofit. We'll take a look at her 30-plus year career and the message she has for other women who are aiming to change the world. You'll bring us that interview coming up a little later in the hour.
Well, yeah, we're loving our new series, yes. Women Mean Business.
Some amazing advice. So take out your pen because you're going to hear some great quotes.
Yeah,
no matter
yeah,
what.
It's true. Yeah, we're
all
starting
right. We are going to begin
segment
with the wild weather that's taking place across the country this morning, and we're going to begin with breaking news out of St. Louis.
That's right. Record rainfall overnight has triggered flash flooding there. In this new video, you can see the water flooding roadways, some completely shut down, in fact. In some areas, the highways are completely underwater, with some people having to be rescued from their cars.
You can see the flooded roads here in St. Peters, Missouri. The National Weather Service says more than 7 inches of rain fell in 5 hours this morning, breaking a record that dated back to 1915.
And that video that you just saw was sent to us by this man, Jerome Smith. He's a truck driver who's been stuck on I-70 outside of St. Louis in that torrential rain. Jerome, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, we understand you are safe right now and able to talk to us, but tell us about what you're seeing, what you've experienced over the last couple of hours.
Well, as I was going down 70 headed towards Denver, it started to, it was rain. I mean, excuse me, it's been raining since I got up this morning, and I noticed cars were headed eastbound in the westbound lane, which is obviously not normal. And as we got past them, we could see the reason why. And it's, the road's completely flooded on both sides. I've got at least 5 vehicles that are stranded in the road ahead of me, and there's probably about 5 or 6 on the other side.
Are there cars that are actually stuck in the water where you are that need to be rescued?
I don't think they need to be rescued. I think that people have been pulled out at this point. They've got road crew guys cleaning out the drains and stuff like that. The water has definitely gone down significantly since I've been here for pretty close to 3 hours now at this point.
Oh, wow. Jerome, in that video you sent us, I mean, it looks like you're going through some pretty high water there. What would you estimate it was that you were driving through?
The barriers to the right of me are at least 4 foot, and there's a point further on ahead of myself to where the barrier, you can even see the barrier. You can see the fence that's on top of the barrier.
Wow.
So
you're a truck driver. You've probably seen just about everything there is to see. Have you ever seen 7 inches of rain in 5 hours before?
Honestly, I've driven through a couple hurricanes. I haven't seen this much accumulated water on an interstate. So.
Wow. All right, Jerome Smith, thank you for taking the time from your car right now to talk to us. We really appreciate it. Stay safe, and we hope you're out of there soon.
Let's get right to your morning news now. Weather.
That means Michelle Grossman is here with the latest on all this and also that heat across the country. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Good morning. And these are pictures that we may see as we go throughout the day, because even into tomorrow, we have a stationary front where we're seeing training rain. That means rain over the same areas, and it's a lot of rain. So we're seeing pictures of, and when you think about water, you have to know that water is very powerful. If you see water, you need to turn around. It doesn't take a lot of water to move cars, even humongous cars. It takes about a foot of water. So just keep that in mind as you're out and about, because we're going to see pictures like this over and over again because of this stationary boundary. Let's show you what's happening right now in terms of radar. We are looking at heavy rain where you see the yellows, the reds, the oranges. That is torrential downpours. We have a lot of heat and humidity to work with. We've been talking about the heat for weeks, and we're looking at temperatures in the triple digits. That's feeding these storms along this front. And notice how it's just training. It's going over the same area over and over again. So the ground is already saturated. Any more water, you're going to see the risk for flash flooding. So we're talking about this particular situation near St. Louis. We're looking at flash flooding. We have a flash flooding emergency. That doesn't happen very often. That is for the next couple of hours. Also seeing the wettest day in 148 years. There is a lot of moisture, a lot of water with some of these storms. This is the setup here. Here's the stationary boundary. It's the same cold front that came through last night. It wiped out that heat, the humidity in the Northeast, and now it's sort of stalled. And that's part of the climate connection. We have these patterns where it stalls and it doesn't move for days and days. And that's why we're getting the rain across the stationary boundary. So we're going to see it move maybe a little bit up, a little bit down, but pretty much in the same spot over the next couple of days. That's why we're expecting to see continued very heavy rain leading to flash flooding, showers and storms also into the mid-Atlantic. And then as we go throughout tomorrow, notice it doesn't move very far. Maybe it moves a little bit further to the north, closer to the mid-Atlantic, but we're going to see more storms, and that's going to lead to the chance for more flash flooding. So it's not just today, it's not just this afternoon, it's into tomorrow. This is what we're expecting in terms of rainfall. This is a lot of rain. We're looking at locally 8 inches or higher, where you see those darker colors, the yellows, the reds, the oranges. That's where we're expecting the most rain, and that flash flood risk does extend into Wednesday. Where you see this pink area, we're looking at the highest risk, but again, we're seeing those downpours like we're seeing outside of Missouri. Here's the heat. 30 million at risk for temperatures into the 90s, temperatures into the triple digits, the Pacific Northwest just getting started with your heat wave. It's hot, it's humid, we have that wildfire risk, so that's a big story as we go throughout the afternoon, and also watching the heat in the central and southern plains into the triple digits once again. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Michelle. We appreciate it. Let's stick with the heat and go to California, where fire crews are making some progress battling the Oak wildfire near Yosemite National Park. Cal Fire says it has nearly 3,000 firefighters battling the flames from all angles.
Meanwhile, the Northeast may be getting some relief, but the extreme heat is now hitting the West, making conditions difficult for those fire crews. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has the latest.
It only took a few days for this to become the largest wildfire here in California this year. This blaze was so destructive, it moved so fast, it incinerated everything in its path. Now firefighters are trying to gain the upper hand.
The peak of California's wildfire season, bringing the sounds and sights feared by so many. The Oak Fire near Yosemite National Park quickly becoming the state's largest blaze of the year, destroying homes and cherished memories like Rodney McGuire's collection of classic cars.
I still haven't absorbed this.
The home where Steve and Andrea Ward were married just 2 weeks ago, also exploding in flames.
For me, losing property versus losing life is you know, I'll take that every day of every week.
The Wards grateful to firefighters risking their lives to save others.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night is how large and how fast this fire grew.
As the blaze breaks off and moves in multiple directions, firefighters are having a tough time staying in front of it. So now they're using the help of the air attack.
But even a steady line of fire retardant isn't stopping the fire spread, now so large it can be seen from space, smoke choking the San Francisco Bay Area almost 200 miles away. It comes as high heat is setting new records from coast to coast. Oklahoma predicted to reach up to 112 degrees. In Dallas, where a grass fire has burned more than a dozen homes, the thermometer has hit 130 times already this year. And the Pacific Northwest, normally cool and wet, reaching 108 degrees. The extreme heat adding to the stress here on the front lines. But not all has been lost, with neighbors helping each other as well as rescuing pets, also left homeless by the devastation.
The Oak Fire has now ballooned to nearly 20,000 acres, but there is some good news. Because this blaze is moving towards old burn scars, it could actually be fully contained by this weekend. But as you can see here, the damage is still extensive. Back to you.
All right, Miguel Almaguer, thanks. Stay safe.
Let's turn now to your money. The Federal Reserve's two-day meeting is getting underway this morning as the central bank looks to bring down the U.S. inflation rate, the highest rate we've seen in 40 years. Most economy experts agree another modest interest rate hike is on the way as the U.S. sits on the edge of a recession. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello joins us now from outside the Federal Reserve in Washington. Tom, good morning.
Joe, good morning to you. And the Fed has made no secret of this, right? They have said very broadly and clearly they are going to raise rates again. It's likely to happen tomorrow by 3/4 of a percentage point. That's on top of the 3/4 point hike that we saw last month. But the Fed is really walking a tightrope here. It wants to slow the economy without pushing it over the cliff and into recession. And the question right now, despite 50-year unemployment lows, are we in fact right there on the edge of a recession? Mid-July and the economic heat is on. The key question, has the economy already slid into recession, shrinking 2 quarters in a row? President Biden remains optimistic.
God willing, I don't think we're going to see a recession.
The fear, the Federal Reserve could push the economy into recession, as it's expected to again raise interest rates another 3/4 of a percentage point on Wednesday to curb 40-year high inflation. The latest inflation report showed no sign of relief, up 9.1% in June. Americans are paying more for rent, food, clothing, and fuel. Though gas prices have dropped 68 cents in a month, they're still $1.17 more than a year ago.
Instead of maybe just running to this supermarket like 2 and 3 times per week, I'm more conscious about trying to get everything in one trip.
The Fed chairman has insisted the price hikes are not sustainable.
We at the Fed understand the hardship that high inflation is causing. We're strongly committed to bringing inflation back down.
Late Monday, more evidence of the inflation effect as retail giant Walmart said Americans are changing what they buy. More groceries, fewer big-ticket items. A recent survey found 58% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. There you go. For some, it's impossible to make ends meet. Food banks are reporting a surge of people in need. From California.
Diapers are so expensive now, and I recently just had twins.
To Virginia.
Their rents are up, their transportation costs are up. They have to fill their tanks to get to work. And the thing that's giving is that food budget.
Underscoring the Fed's challenge. How much pressure is the Fed under right now to get this economy back to an even keel?
They need to get it right this time, and the danger here is they really get it wrong a second time after providing too much stimulus to the economy. Now they're going to take it away too quickly and perhaps create a recession.
Let's boil it down what he's talking about there, guys. By providing too much stimulus, what he means is the Fed flooded the economy with money. Treasury flooded the economy with money because we were trying to stave off a depression during the pandemic, you may recall. Keep people employed, keep them fed. Well, now this Fed is facing a very unusual predicament here. The economy, in terms of unemployment, remains very low, 50-year lows. People are still spending. In fact, we also saw that wages are going up, but not keeping up with inflation. So if we are on the verge of a recession, it is the strangest recession in history because of all these unprecedented situations involving the pandemic and all the activity over the last few years. Higher rates mean credit cards become more expensive, car loans, home loans, and the Fed influences but does not set mortgage rates. Joe?
All right. Tom Costello breaking it down there for us. Thank you, Tom.
We're also following former President Trump this morning as he returns to Washington for the first time since leaving a year and a half ago. His visit comes amid criticism from President Biden over his actions on January 6th and as new evidence gets released by the House panel into the attack on the Capitol. NBC News Now anchor and senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson has the latest for us.
Hey there. So you have the former president focusing on public safety today, according to aides, as the current president, in a rare direct attack, lays into Donald Trump for basically hypocrisy, saying he did nothing on January 6th for hours, even as law enforcement came under attack. Former President Trump returning to Washington today for the first time since leaving office under the shadow of his election fraud lies. He's set to deliver a speech aides say will focus on law and order, just over a mile from the Capitol, where his supporters led a violent attack on January 6th. Mr. Trump doing nothing publicly to call off the mob for hours. President Biden now slamming his predecessor.
Donald Trump lacked the courage to act. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-cop.
Mr. Trump in Arizona Friday, lashing out at the January 6th hearings.
I watched this hoax last night.
It comes as the committee is releasing new details about the president's refusal to condemn the rioters after the attack. On Monday, highlighting this image of a draft of his January 7th speech to the nation. Ivanka Trump confirming her father marked it up.
Do you recognize the handwriting?
It looks like my father's handwriting.
One line directs the Justice Department to prosecute those responsible for the attack to the fullest extent of the law, but it's crossed out. Mr. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, was asked about that deletion.
You know why he wanted that crossed out?
I don't know.
Another line saying to the rioters, "I want to be very clear, you do not represent me," was also crossed out. And this morning, a new detail suggesting an escalation by the Justice Department in its investigation into January 6th. Mark Short, the former chief of staff to then Vice President Mike Pence, appearing before a federal grand jury last Friday, according to a source familiar with his testimony. A sign, perhaps, that the DOJ is expanding its investigation beyond those who attacked the Capitol itself and those involved in the so-called fake elector scheme.
I can confirm that I did receive a subpoena for the federal grand jury, and I complied with that subpoena. But under advice of counsel, I really can't say much more than that.
It's not just former President Trump who will be speaking here in D.C. Former Vice President Mike Pence will also be delivering remarks, potentially seen as a bit of a preview of a possible head-to-head matchup, given the widespread speculation that both men could run for president come 2024. Back to you.
All right, Hallie Jackson, thank you so much. Now, we've just finished up Shark Week. That was last week when we were
Feels
covering
like it's been Shark Summer,
yeah,
but yeah.
Exactly. Well, it kind of is, which is why we did Shark Week. But now, I guess you could call this Whale Week.
Whale Week, all right.
That's because we told you yesterday about that huge humpback whale caught on camera in Massachusetts. Look at this, soaring out of the water and landing on a small boat.
That stunning encounter is just one of a string of whale sightings as the massive mammals move into colder water to feed. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa is up in Massachusetts for us this morning where that jaw-dropping encounter took place. Emily, it's remarkable. No one was injured there.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Remarkable is right, especially that no one was injured, but also that the boat managed to stay afloat, and especially when you consider the size of these humpback whales, which can actually grow in length to about the length of that large boat behind me there. And right now, about 1,000 whales are feeding just off of New England's shorelines. And when whales are feeding, they're not paying attention to anything else. That's why experts say if you're heading out on the water, you got to be sure to be alert.
This morning, beachgoers on whale watch, and Plymouth, Massachusetts has a front row seat to the feeding frenzy. One boat getting a little too close to the action.
I just saw the boat go freaking flying. It was crazy. It was nuts. I was like, I couldn't believe that thing was still floating after that.
A humpback whale breaching the surface Sunday in what's called lunge feeding.
So they're feeding on very quick schools of fish, and to do that, they need to rush up at the surface.
And what goes up must come down, all 40 tons of it. The same schools of fish drawing crowds of boaters are attracting whales too, creating a precarious situation, according to researcher Laura House.
It does pose a risk for human safety and for the whale safety. When whales are feeding, they tend to be a bit distracted, just like a human might be on Thanksgiving when you're eating a big feast.
Remarkably, no one was injured in the Sunday morning surprise, but the close call among a torrent of recent whale sightings off of Massachusetts coast. Michael Manfredi has been watching in awe from his paddleboard the last few weekends.
All of a sudden, you see the front of the whale, just the mouth opening up like this, and then it opens wide.
and it's coming out of the water, and there's fish flowing out of the whale's mouth.
The New York City area experiencing its own surge in whale activity in recent years, according to a new study, reporting they're lingering for longer periods of time, too.
If there is food around that's plentiful, the whales are going to find it. So it's not unordinary for whales to sometimes be close to shore.
While most humpback whales are no longer considered endangered, a quarter of their deaths on the East Coast are blamed on boats, House says. That's why you should always be alert on the water, avoid feeding marine animals, and most importantly, create a buffer zone of at least 100 feet from whale activity, so glimpses of the wild wonder aren't taking away more than your breath.
And the safest place to see whales is simply from solid ground. You can try to get a broader perspective by seeking a better vantage point, a higher vantage point. You can also consider using tools like binoculars or cameras with zoom lenses to get a better picture, improve that whale watching experience. I know earlier I had mentioned that no person was injured in that wild encounter. It also appears the whale was okay, but researchers tell us they're going to be tracking that whale to make sure that's the case. Guys, back to you.
Binoculars, good idea. All
yeah,
right.
exactly.
Emily, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, policy trauma. A family separated at the southern border by a Trump administration policy is now filing a lawsuit.
The legal fight they're digging in for and what it could mean for the current White House. That's up next.
International headlines now. A gunman is dead after a shooting that killed 2 people outside of Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada.
Yeah, NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald joins us now from London with that and the rest of the day's international headlines. Hey, Megan, good morning.
Yeah, guys, good morning. Good to be with you. As you mentioned, we start in Canada where 2 people are dead, 2 people are injured after this deadly overnight terrifying rampage that took place just outside the city of Vancouver. What we know is that there are 4 crime scenes here. Police tell us that this 28-year-old suspect shot and critically injured a woman in a casino at around midnight. He then goes on a couple of hours later, kills a guy at this center that helps homeless people. Then a few hours after that, he shoots and kills a man at a bus stop before injuring another man in his leg. Police finally able to catch up to this guy, taking him out, killing him at the scene there. And the motive, well, that's something that's still under investigation. Want to turn now to Japan, where a man that was convicted of a mass killing back in 2008 was executed. Early this morning, he was hanged inside the Tokyo detention center. This all happened about over a decade ago when police say that this man drove his vehicle into a crowded street, a shopping street where there was a load of people there, killing 3 people before getting outside of his vehicle and then stabbing 4 others to death. Now, Japan has defended their controversial tactics of execution, the Globe obviously giving them criticism around hanging people, but we do know that 3 people were hanged last year, and right now more than 100 people are on death row. And turning to a little bit of lighter news here, the UK is going to be hosting the Eurovision Song Contest next year. Of course, Ukraine won that contest this year, and they earned the right to host it in 2023. But because of what's happening in Ukraine, because of the war with Russia, the organizers of the event had some concern for safety. They put a little pressure on Ukraine. They decided to concede. They will be working with the BBC to put this event on in the UK. And of course, the BBC saying that they will make sure that this event represents a lot of Ukrainian culture as well as heritage. And of course, guys, that is something we will look forward to watching next year.
Absolutely. All right.
All right, Megan, thank you so much. Now, 4 migrant parents whose children were separated from them at the southern border during the Trump administration are now suing the government, saying the controversial policy traumatized their families. NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley has been all over this story for us, and she joins us now. Hey, Julia, it's good to see you. So this lawsuit was filed in Arizona just yesterday. Tell us exactly what these families are suing over and what sort of damages they're seeking.
That's right. They're suing because they say that they were so traumatized that actually it's ended up with lasting trauma, both physically and mentally, on their families. In one case that we were able to speak to the mother, we learned about a little boy who was separated, and the mother could see him as he got onto the van. yelling from the cell with other mothers as they took her son away for 2 months and, in fact, misspelled his name and he became lost in the system. These families say that as a result of this policy, which was intentional and caused and put in place in order to deter migrants from coming to the border, they suffered the consequences. As we know, and we've reported extensively on this since the beginning of the policy in 2018 and even the pilot program in 2017, this was a policy put in place by the Trump administration to prosecute everyone who crosses the border, even just illegally, as a misdemeanor, and put them into prosecution, which meant separating parents from their children. And there were no plans put in place by the Trump administration to try to track those families or reunite them. In fact, they really had to fight just to be reunited. Now those families are coming saying that they want to seek damages from the government, who, of course, is now the Biden administration, which has brought them into the spotlight for having to pay for the consequences of that Trump administration policy.
And Julia, you actually spoke with one of the plaintiffs in this case, a mother who was separated from her son for more than 2 months. What did she tell you about her experience, and what sort of action does she want to see now from the current administration, from the Biden administration?
That's right. She's going by the initials MSE, and she's cited in this lawsuit. She's one of the parties seeking damages. But yes, I had the opportunity to speak with her yesterday, and she's now living with both of her children in Austin, Texas. She's very thankful they're all together, but she says she just wants to be able to give her children a sense of security in life right now. She's working as a line cook. She doesn't have permanent status to be able to stay in the United States. They don't know what the next day will look like. And she says that they were separated for so long. She was actually told many times that her son would be put up for adoption. There were other families in the United States who couldn't have children, and that it would be a happy ending for all of them. Of course, that gave her agony. And right when she thought she was going to be deported, she was actually brought to another detention center in the United States, and her son was led into the room, and they were able to reunite, and she really hasn't been apart from him since. But she said the trauma lasted for him, that he doesn't talk a lot about what happened then, but very recently, or very soon after they were reunited, she discovered that he was withdrawn and actually began to cut himself. She's trying to seek mental health services for him to be able to come to terms with what he went through and to be able to repair their relationship.
Oh, Julia Ainsley, heartbreaking reporting, so important. Thanks for joining us.
Coming up, back to school bills with prices expected to match last year's record highs.
Yeah, we're digging into the financial strain facing families and what you can do to save money. That's up next.
You may not want to believe it, but lots of kids will soon be swapping sunscreen for school supplies.
Maybe you do want to believe it.
Yeah, right. Depends on who you ask.
Yeah, I don't have kids. I don't know. Inflation has driven up the price of many essentials, and back-to-school shopping is going to hit your wallet differently this year. Our senior consumer investigative correspondent, Vicki Wynn, has a crash course in how to save while stocking up for the school year. What do parents need to know, Vicki? Hi.
Good morning. You were right on the money. I think the kids are like, boo. Some kids are starting school as early as next week, but the parents are like, yes, go. Bye. So as a lot of us are still savoring those final weeks of summer vacation, it's still a good time to start gathering school supplies for the fall. The retailers, they're already bracing for a record back-to-school season, and it has parents pulling out the shopping list earlier than ever. But don't worry, we have the tips and tools to help you beat the fall frenzy.
This year, total back-to-school spending is expected to tie last year's record high, with shoppers dropping an average of $864 per household. That's $168 more than before the pandemic. And a quarter of homes will shell out more than $500 on school-related purchases, up 7% from last year.
Everything we buy, including school supplies, is going to cost us more now than it might have cost last year.
It's the latest blow to families across the country, already managing tight budgets amid rising prices and inflation.
We were getting by perfectly fine on my husband's paycheck. Now it's barely making ends meet, and it's stressful and not comfortable for us to live that way.
Sam Waldorf has 4 kids between the ages of 8 and 13. She's getting a part-time job to help with her family's growing expenses, like the $800 she expects to spend on school supplies this year.
Even just adding the extra quarter to the price for every single little thing, it's definitely adding up.
Waldorf is among the more than 40% of parents who say they're comparison shopping online or waiting for sales to save money. Others say they're buying store or generic brand items. Nearly a quarter of parents say their kids will reuse old supplies, while about a third will cut back in other areas. Experts say before you rush to fill those backpacks, ask teachers which supplies are essential. Stick to your list while shopping. Buy items in bulk and split them with other parents. Start shopping early to allow more time to find the best prices and to spread out your bills. And buy expensive electronics like computers secondhand from places like Swappa, Best Buy, or Amazon, but make sure the items come with a warranty. Also providing relief for some parents, between now and the end of August, more than a dozen states will have sales tax holidays on items like school supplies and clothing.
Saving any little bit helps. So like even just a couple dollars saving on the tax-free is going to help.
All right, and when it comes to shopping, guess what? The back-to-school season is second only to the winter holiday season for consumers and retailers. So this is really the time to take a page out of Santa's book, make that list, check it twice. There are some apps that can really help you, too, like Honey, Camel, Rakuten. Try them out. They help hook you up with deals as well as cash back, and we could all use that right now.
And it doesn't matter if you're naughty or nice, you still get school supplies. So.
I know, true.
But maybe not new outfits and shoes,
right?
Only if you're nice.
It's oh, you know the other tip.
Your 3 girls.
The other tip my family gave is like enlist the aunties and uncles and the grandparents to buy the backpacks or the lunch boxes. People want to contribute. So if you have folks in your family who are like, "What can we do for you?" You know, this could be a way to take a chunk out of that.
Yeah, my grandma used to always try to stick me with the rolling backpack because it's better for my back. And
yes, practical.
And so cool.
Not cool, though.
Really
Not
good,
as cool.
really good in the hallways. Yeah, really good for my social status. All right, Vicki, thanks.
Pope Francis is expected to continue his penance tour of Canada by leading Mass at the Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton later today. It comes after the Pope delivered a poignant apology to Indigenous communities at an emotional event in Alberta yesterday. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson is following the Pope's trip and joins us from Edmonton. Ann, yesterday was really a significant moment for both Indigenous communities in Canada and the Catholic Church. So first of all, explain to us what the Pope was apologizing for and what it was he said to the crowds.
So for more than a century, Joe, the Catholic Church ran about 60% of the residential schools here in Canada. And residential schools were set up to basically force Indigenous people to assimilate. They took the kids from their families, they put them in school, they cut their hair, they told them their culture was worthless, they wouldn't let them speak their language. That was the cultural abuse. Kids were also physically and emotionally abused. So Pope Francis, after being asked for many years by the Indigenous community, came here to apologize for the Catholic Church's role in those schools. He called that policy of forced assimilation catastrophic, and he called for a further investigation into exactly what happened. Some 150,000 children went through that system. 6,000 died. Joe?
So, Ann, we know this is just one stop on the Pope's tour. What is next on the agenda? How's his health holding up? We know we've been seeing him in a wheelchair during this trip.
Yeah, he's clearly having problems moving around, Joe. Yesterday, he went to an Indigenous parish here in Edmonton, and he got up from his chair and he had to walk maybe what seemed to be 5 steps over to the Madonna, and he used his cane, and he really had trouble moving. A 10-hour flight from Rome for an 85-year-old man is very difficult. And so he has been in a wheelchair because he's having severe problems with his right knee, and he also suffers from sciatica. But it's funny, Francis is still trying to do everything he can to greet people while he's in the wheelchair. He sort of made an end run around his security yesterday and had his wheelchair moved over to a fenced area so he could greet people. But all of this, what strikes me, Joe, is this is such a different papal trip because it's very low-key. There are no big crowds. There's no signage, no souvenirs. That's all because of what this trip is about, and that is an apology to the Indigenous people of Canada.
All right, Ann Thompson reporting from Edmonton. Ann, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Coming up, she's the head of one of the biggest nonprofits around.
Yeah, we'll show you how Angela Williams rose to the top of the business world and hear her advice to young women trying to make their mark after the break.
Welcome back. The state of the consumer is on display this morning as we anticipate the latest snapshot of exactly where Americans' confidence is, how they spend their hard-earned cash, and how how sky-high inflation is affecting it all.
The Consumer Confidence Survey, as it's known, takes into account how consumers feel about the labor market and business conditions, along with their expectations on where the economy is headed over the next few months. The latest data comes out a little later this morning, but last month the survey showed the lowest level of confidence in over a year and the lowest expectations for the economy in nearly a decade.
Yeah, we see that number right there, 98.7. So Kristen Myers is the editor-in-chief of thebalance.com and joins us now. Kristen, good morning to you. First things first, break down those numbers for us because this can get a little confusing. So what exactly does that 98.7 figure mean for the month of June? How does it translate to how consumers are feeling about the economy?
Yeah, that 98.7 really doesn't mean anything to any of us, right? What does it mean if it's 98.7 or 99? But as you were pointing out, this essentially is a level. Anything over 90 does still indicate economic growth. However, what we've been seeing in those figures is that they've been routinely sinking since January. Back in January, those figures were at 111.1, then sinking to 98.7. So we have really dropped seriously since the beginning of the year. And when it comes out later today at 10 a.m., those new consumer confidence numbers, it's expected that it's going to sink even further in the month of July to a print number of 97. So what does that essentially mean? It means that, frankly, that inflation, 9.1% last month, has just frankly been slamming consumer wallets. And they are showing it in some of these figures. And as you mentioned, that expectation index, we're going to see how much that sinks today. As you mentioned, it sank to its lowest level in nearly a decade. Since 2013 was the last time that expectation index was as low. So it's going to be interesting to see what these numbers say about how consumers are essentially feeling about their wallets.
Let's talk more about indications of exactly how consumers might be feeling, how we're kind of able to get some of that information. Walmart, for decades, has sort of served as a bellwether of the strength of the consumer, and it's earnings season right now, and the retailer has now slashed their profit and earnings outlook for the rest of the year because of the impact they say inflation is having on people's spending habits. Do you think inflation has fundamentally changed how people spend their money? And do you think that that sign from Walmart could be a sign that we're going to see more things like that from more companies coming?
I don't know if inflation has changed fundamentally how people are spending their money, but it's clear that inflation is changing how people are spending their money right now. We do still continue to see the retail sector doing well, but there is still some weakness. As Walmart mentioned when they were cutting that full quarter guidance, they essentially said, look, people are still spending at our stores, but they're spending on things like groceries. They're spending on things like gas. And that actually has lower profit margins for a company like Walmart. They're not buying televisions anymore. They're not buying electronics or other gadgets that really help retailers like Walmart, like Amazon, like Target do incredibly well every quarter. But we've been seeing this throughout the pandemic. People are still going out and spending money, but they're running to restaurants. They're going to bars. They're trying to get on a plane and go on a vacation. They're not interested in buying a stove or a refrigerator or other durable goods or things that they really might not need around their house. And I think that we're going to continue to see that as long as both inflation remains high, but still the employment picture continues to remain strong. So people do still have money. They are still willing to spend, at least for now, just not the way they used to.
Kristen, we'd love to ask you for tips. So what's your advice to consumers who are dealing with the sky-high prices day in and day out and are also worried that we're heading toward a recession?
Yeah, so when it comes to inflation, I do always say, it sounds trite, but try to increase your income. We are likely headed towards a recession. So if you haven't asked your boss for a raise or a promotion, you need to do it now before no raises are on the table any longer. There's also ways to essentially just, you're going to have to change your shopping a little bit. You're really going to have to make sure to hold on to those budgets. And when it comes to a recession, emergency savings, really save as much as you can right now and avoid any major purchases like a house. It's expensive anyway, so avoid that house, avoid that car for right now, just in case you might not be able to make those payments next year.
Really good tips there, especially the asking for a raise one. Good foresight.
You already texted and asked for one while we were just...
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Kristen Myers. Thanks. We appreciate your time.
More financial headlines now. The nation's largest automaker is following in Walmart's footsteps. It's also being hit by rocky economic conditions.
That's right. CNBC's Bertha Coombs joins us now with that and the rest of the day's financial headlines. Hello again, Bertha.
Hey, good morning, Joe and Savannah. That's right. We've got another company coming up short when it comes to the bottom line and profits. General Motors reporting this morning that second quarter earnings that dipped below what Wall Street was expecting. The automaker pegged the miss on supply chain issues. They had trouble getting chips. They had trouble getting other parts, and those shortages stunted their all-important quarter-end delivery goals, though GM is confident that it will be able to ramp up production in the second half of this year. Meantime, Alibaba, that's the big Chinese retailer, announcing plans to allow more investors in mainland China to buy its stock. The Chinese tech giant applying to upgrade its shares in Hong Kong from a secondary listing to a primary listing. Alibaba has been hit hard since the Chinese government cracked down on the country's tech sector. It was fined nearly $3 billion last year after regulators accused it of acting like a monopoly. Alibaba also trades on the New York Stock Exchange and will keep that listing. More Americans plan to tap into their Social Security retirement benefits early and continue working. A survey by the Nationwide Retirement Institute shows 42% of people 26 and older plan to do that. That's up from 36% last year. Big factor in their decision, concerns about the economy and inflation. Claiming early has some disadvantages, though. People who do that before age 62 can see their benefits reduced by as much as 30%. You want to wait as long as you can to make sure you have that longer term Social Security. But I'll tell you, my mom collected her Social Security and worked till she was 80. Wow. Built up a really nice cushion.
Oh my gosh, good for her. That's amazing.
Yeah, she was amazing.
Yeah. Bertha, thank you so much.
Now to another edition of our series, Women Mean Business.
Yeah, this morning we introduce you to Angela Williams, President and CEO of United Way Worldwide. Here's a little bit of her story.
Born in South Carolina, Angela Williams' civil rights activist parents taught her perseverance and dedication. And she says moving around for her father's Navy career taught her to be flexible and seize opportunities. After graduating from the University of Texas School of Law, Williams got her first job in the military as an active duty lawyer for the United States Air Force. Then in 2006, she was tapped to fill the role of interfaith liaison for the Bush-Clinton-Katrina Fund, helping provide donations to the survivors of the devastating hurricane. After roles at nonprofits, the YMCA of the USA, and Easter Seals, last year came the job that has proven the most fulfilling when Williams became the first woman and the first African American to lead the United Way Worldwide. It's the charity ranked #1 for revenue in the country, giving her the opportunity to continue her life of service on a global scale. Angela Williams is a woman who means business.
And Angela Williams, President and CEO of United Way Worldwide, joins me now. Angela, good morning. Thanks so much for being here. So I want to start with the beginning of your story that I mentioned there. You were raised in a military family and you went on to become an active duty lawyer serving in the United States Air Force. How did your military background help lay the foundation to help you succeed in your career?
One of the things that you learn by serving in the military is that you think about what is the goal that you want to achieve and recognize that in order to achieve it, it takes a team working together. It also means that we have to be disciplined and also flexible.
Absolutely. Of course, as I mentioned also, one of the things that's just so impressive about you is you're the first woman and also the first African American to lead United Way Worldwide. I mean, two minority groups when it comes to corporate America and certainly when it comes to leadership in corporate America. Tell us what challenges you've faced because of those things and how you've managed to overcome them. What have you learned?
One of the things that I've learned is that no is just a word. So when one door closes on you, there is always another door that opens. And I've always been a person that seizes opportunities. And when something comes to me and it's different than what I would have thought about doing, I sit down for a minute and think, wow, is this something that really is taking me to the next level in my career? And does it meet my personal values as well as my own professional and personal goals?
We always end this interview with some advice, so I will ask you that in just a minute. But that was a great one right there. I just wrote down, no, it's just a word. We like to take little nuggets from each of these interviews we do. Angela, I wonder, you've had such an accomplished career, an extensive resume. Is there anything you haven't accomplished yet that you hope to tackle next?
That's an interesting question because one is that I've always wanted to live a life of purpose and service. And so each job I take, I say, wow, this is it. And then I get to the next job and I say, wow, this is it. So I don't have a direct answer other than to say where I am right now at United Way Worldwide. Wow, this is it.
What would you say has been your biggest accomplishment of your career thus far?
I would say being able to be in jobs at critical moments in our country's history to be able to provide service. For example, when I worked for Senator Ted Kennedy on the Senate Judiciary Committee, I was there at a moment in time when there was the dragging of James Byrd in Texas, and I worked on the Hate Crimes Prevention Act. Or there was that moment in time in our history when Black churches were burning around the country. Janet Reno was the Attorney General at that time, and President Clinton was in office. And they put together a special task force of FBI and ATF agents and federal prosecutors to find out what was going on. And I was one of the 6 federal prosecutors that served on this special task force. And now here at United Way, when so much is happening around the world, and we are operating in 37 countries, meeting the needs of local communities.
Angela, last quick one for you. Last one little nugget of advice, your favorite thing that you tell to a young woman starting out in her career.
Be your authentic self.
I love it.
Don't let anyone put you in a box. Be all of who you are wherever you are.
Don't let anyone put you in a box. That's also a really good one. Important to keep in mind. Angela Williams, we appreciate your time. Congrats on your success thus far, and we can't wait to see what you do next. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, a story that brings new meaning to the phrase grin and bear it.
How technology many of us have on our smartphones is being used to protect pandas. That's next.
We are back with some difficult news for some of you. After nearly 40 years, Choco Tacos are officially being discontinued. Yeah, the ice cream brand Klondike shared the inside scoop on Twitter, saying it had experienced a surge in demand and needed to make tough decisions to keep its products available. Fans of the frozen treat were melting down on Twitter as they shared their disappointment with the brand's Twitter account and urged it to reconsider. But don't worry, hope is not lost. Klondike said that it is going to work to bring Choco Taco back in the coming years. And you and I were just discussing how neither of us have had one, which creates a dilemma. Do we have one before it goes away, fall in love with it, and then it goes away and it's disappointing, or do we just not have one
at all,
and then we just don't care? I got a strong response here.
A Choco Taco.
So we're supposed to have a Choco Taco?
Yes,
all right. All right.
Okay.
Well, stay tuned. More tomorrow.
Yeah,
all right.
We'll let you know.
All right. So we are used to facial recognition on our smartphones, but now it may actually benefit animals too.
Yeah, research based in Southwest China is developing the technology to protect endangered pandas. And big news, NBC News foreign correspondent Janice Becker joins us now in studio.
Within reach.
I bought shoes. To visit this. Oh, it's so good to have you here.
Well, it's great to be here and great to see everybody. And everyone loves pandas.
Yes, true.
And now facial recognition is being used to track these adorable creatures, both in captivity and in the wild. Now, we recently visited the Chengdu research base of giant panda breeding. It's in southwest China to learn how it works.
Giant pandas are revered around the world, and most of them live here in China. About 1,800 are in the wild and more than 600 in captivity, where they have a rock star sort of popularity.
It's very cute and lovely.
They look adorable, and pretty much everything they do is cute.
There's a mother and baby here.
But to the human eye, telling those furry faces apart, well, it's not so black and white. To know which panda might be Beibei or Aijiao or Baoli.
Is this the same panda?
No,
a different one.
Different one. Yeah.
And so researchers at the Chengdu Panda Base are looking deeper, developing facial recognition technology for pandas. Chen Peng is the researcher behind a growing database of panda images and videos that computers analyze to detect slight differences in how they look. Their mouth, nose markings, and ears, he says. We can distinguish their features through deep learning. Being able to recognize each bear can help with conservation, experts say, because they can know panda populations better, their habitats, health, and how they live. In the wild, where 2/3 of the world's giant pandas roam, hundreds of remote and infrared cameras can also watch for threats. Using artificial intelligence for pandas is different from AI that's used on humans, and nowhere more than here in China, because pandas are covered in fur and don't really have facial expressions beyond this, or this, or this.
The pandas are most active in the morning before it gets too hot. Then they just want to go inside and sleep.
Getting a panda's portrait isn't easy. It can take hours for photographers to get usable images, including of pandas living at zoos in the U.S. Soon, panda fans here will be able to use their phones to scan their favorite faces and get details about who's who. They have lovely ears and little feet, she says. While giant pandas are no longer classed as endangered, they are still vulnerable. AI could ensure they're better protected, or at least never called by the wrong name.
You can't go wrong with a panda. They are impossibly cute to see in real life, and they know how to put on a good show.
Yeah.
We're just going to run that video. It's like instead of a Yule log at Christmas, we'll just have pandas.
Eating bamboo.
Exactly.
All right, Janice, we love it, and we love having you here.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you.
Thanks for having me.
And that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.